Hello and welcome to Crusader Kings 2. So, this game can be very intimidating when you first look at playing it, and I want you guys to know that it's not that bad. Hopefully with this tutorial I can teach you guys how to ease into it in a quick way. So, immediately off, you're going to hit single player, new. And this is with no mods or anything, so High Middle Ages is going to give you the longest time to play. And it might be the easiest way to learn is to just play. You're gonna lose, but that's just how it is. So a lot of places are gonna recommend you start either in Brittany, because you get basically a whole duchy, or here in Ireland where you can get a whole duchy. So first thing I did was I switched it to realm mode because it's a little nicer than just looking at the terrain. This divides it up into the highest title. So a king owns all of this land, this is an empire, and so it kind of shows nation borders. But we're going to start off in Brittany this time. If you want a more in-depth kind of how to play, I have a series on Ireland that you guys can go check out. So first thing you do is you select the territory and you hit play, and this game rules menu comes up. So there's a whole bunch of different rules that you can change. Some of them will turn off Steam achievements, but if you're not going for Steam achievements, play for whatever is fun. So you can actually save them and load them. I've got a couple preferred ones. I like to play with defensive packs off. Defensive packs are, once you get to a certain size, other people will be threatened by you and they'll form alliances against you. But it also works the other way. If there's a NPC faction that's just getting huge and steamrolling across the map, people will band up and stop them so that it doesn't become one giant blob. But there's another title, or there's another game setting. So the easiest way to find it is to select various from all rules, and it's this one, cultural title names. So you can turn it off, still keeps achievements. So does the no defensive packs, and you can also turn off titles named after dynasties. But this just makes naming a little easier. It'll keep everything concise and easy to follow. You're not going to get names switching from whatever a certain culture calls it. So this will load in and we'll go through. I'll talk about all the menus and some strategies, but there's a lot of intricacies about this game that you'll have to learn for yourself or watch someone play through it, because not everything can be covered in a 20 to 30 minute video. So this will give you a brief overview of what the game is, and then this will tell you about your specific faction that you chose to play. So you can read over this. It tells you about your culture at the top, your government in the middle, and your religion at the bottom. Most of the time, if you don't have any DLCs, the only thing that'll change is your culture. You'll almost always be, I think you have to be feudal government with no DLCs, and you have to be Catholic with no DLCs. So, first thing, game starts up, it's automatically paused, and on terrain mode. So, you can come down here and select realms, and it'll show you nice borders. You can also go and hit diplomatic relations, and this will show you how your neighboring counts and dukes view you. You can look at the different religions. You can look at different cultures, and it even goes on to show you the de jure kingdom or empires, kingdoms, and duchies. But those aren't necessary. Most of the time you will be on realms. So this game is a little bit different than other similar strategy games. This doesn't focus so much on the kingdom. I selected Brittany, but I won't always be Brittany. I might not even own this land by the end of the game. It focuses specifically on your dynasty, which is this house right here. This shield. I'm the House of Derains. I don't speak French or so I'm sure I butchered it. But I'm currently playing as Conan. If I were to die, I'll become my son. If he were to die, I will go to the nearest appropriate male. Actually, for this specific succession laws, my heir is my sister. And so you can find out your succession laws by clicking on this shield here. This will give you the overview of your main title. It'll tell you your succession line. It'll tell you how much money you generate. It'll tell you people who have claims on the title. And you can click on any portrait and it'll pull it up in the big window. And to go back, this is a button I didn't know existed for the longest time. This little back arrow right by the X goes back to the previous window you were viewing, and it keeps quite a long history of what you had viewed. So, first thing that might scare you off is all the different rankings. So if I click on my capital here, it's got a whole bunch of different pictures. These little pictures are barony level holdings. So they're not all necessarily baronies. Like a barony is a castle, a city has a mayor, and a bishopric has a bishop. So above them are counts. So like this guy here is a count. A count will always have these kind of crowns over their title and this kind of border around their picture. When you get above that, you get dukes, who have this kind of opulent crown, and their borders are a little bigger. Above them, you have kings, who have the golden border and the more stereotypical crown with the red velvet underneath the different arms. And then above kings, you have emperors, who get this super ornate crown on their primary title, and they add gems to their border. So those are consistent through every culture. In the Middle East, they're called by different names. You have caliphs and sultans and emirs, but by looking at their borders and their crowns, you'll be able to tell the different rankings. Under each person's page, personalized page, you'll see the different titles that they own, and their corresponding rankings are in the crowns above them. So, if I pull up my character, I have a whole bunch of stats here. I have my various traits, my titles, claims on things that I can try and fight for, and diplomacy, but I don't currently have any allies or enemies. So, for my personal stats, you have two numbers. You have your personal number, which is what your character has, and then your state number, which is based on your skill, your council's skill, and your wife's skill. So diplomacy affects how your court views you, their opinion bonus. So if I click on this count here, he has an opinion of me. His opinion is 8. And 5 plus 5 bonus is because I have a certain state diplomacy. Diplomacy also affects prestige generated per month, which is this number over here. You can see it's broken down, but diplomacy skill is plus 0.20. And then it also affects your vassal limit, which is this number here or here. And so based on how high your diplomacy skill is, mine's fairly low, so I only have a certain vassal limit. And the vassal limit raises based on your maximum title, your highest title. So a count cannot have that many vassals. A duke can have a little more, a king can have more than that, and then an emperor will have the highest base total. And then for your next skill, you have martial, which is less important for rulers, but it is still a very important skill. It affects how strong of you are when you're actually commanding your army. But if you're a ruler, you probably don't want to be commanding your armies directly. It's good to have a high one even if you're not leading your armies, because it affects how big your levy is from each personal holding. So from this county, I have 609 troops, but based on my military skill, I actually am getting a -20 to that because I'm not very martially inclined. And your morale, or your martial, also affects the morale of your army. So after a fight, the morale will slowly generate back. The higher your martial skill, the faster that'll rise up. For stewardship, it affects your maximum demesne size, which is how many counties you can personally, well, not necessarily counties, how many titles you directly control. So I only have one county, so my demesne is only one, but the more blanket ones, like dukes, kings, and emperors, or I guess the titles of that height, so duchies, kingdoms, and empires, don't count for demesne. It's only barony level titles and county level titles. So stewardship also affects how fast a county will convert to your culture, and it'll also affect your personal income from each holding. So if I mouse over this, I have a plus 50% tax income because of my stewardship skill. And then stewardship also affects your tech. So your martial skill affects how fast you get military tech. Your stewardship affects how fast you get economy, and your learning affects how fast you get culture. I'll talk about tech a little more later. Intrigue. Intrigue is important for plot power and imprisonment. So if you're trying to assassinate people or imprison vassals who are a little hard to control, we'll say, the higher your intrigue, the higher your success rate. And then the last one is learning. Learning is really only for generating piety and for tech. So let's go to these other more currency stats. You have your wealth, which is used for hiring mercenaries, making new titles, so making a new duchy title. It's used for upkeep and for like upkeeping your armies and for building new things inside your specific counties. Your next stat is prestige. Prestige for a feudal lord isn't very important. You don't use it for much. It's more of kind of a score type thing. If you are a tribal, say you get the Old Gods DLC, and you have a tribal county, you can actually use that for upgrading your tribe. But that's not something you necessarily need to worry about coming in as a Catholic feudal lord. Piety is important for when you create new titles, you need to have a certain level of piety. And also, the higher your piety, up to a max of 1,000, the lower the cost for a title. So if you have 0 piety and you try and make a title, it could cost 400 to make a duchy title. But if you have 1,000 piety, it'll only cost you 200. And that scales for kingdoms and empires as well. Your next one is demesne. I kind of already talked about that. That's how many direct holdings you can own. Your vassal limit is how many direct vassals you can have. So if I were the King of France, all of these shields are counting as direct vassals. You can have a duke under you, and he can have counts under him, but only the duke will count for the king's vassal limit because he's a direct vassal of the king. And then your next one is your overall holding count. So this counts all of the baronies and all of your lands. And then the last one is your score. So after a character dies, all of your prestige gets converted into score, and you start over with the prestige of that character. So there's some other menus that we should probably drill through real quick. This is your council. Their skill directly affects the state skill. You want as high a score as you want. You can actually hire new ones in, but be careful switching them out too much because people will get mad when you fire them. All of these little buttons have tooltips. I really recommend you read them. I'm not going to go over this because I'm just trying to quick rush through everything. So do this. A lot of the times you're not going to be using some of these options. Like, I don't really use sow dissent often. I don't really suppress revolts often. I don't research tech very often. The spy master I usually put on studying tech, and the court chaplain is usually on either improve religious relations or proselytize. For laws, this directly affects how the realm you control is governed, and you can only change laws every 10 years. And your vassals get to vote on it, so it's very important that you have good relations with your vassals. But you can change succession laws, succession types, and gender laws. You can, the higher your kingdom, or the higher your realm title, the different laws are unlocked. So as a duke, I can't really do that many different laws, but I can change the obligations, so different taxation and levy requirements. And then this brings us to technology. So technology point generation is based on if your spy can steal points and your monthly income from each of your traits, your state traits, not your personal traits. You can also get military points through fighting wars. After each battle screen, there'll be a thing that tells you how much prestige you've gained, how much piety you've gained, how much tech points you've gained, and troops lost. These tech points play a small role, but they give bonuses to different things, and they unlock different laws in buildings. So basically, military points upgrade how big an army you can have. They add like bonuses to specific troops, and how fast it takes to siege and how slow it takes for the enemies to siege you. Economy generates money, and different buildings require certain levels of technology to build, and then construction at the very end reduces how long it takes to build something and how expensive it is to build something. Culture is more based on different people's opinions of you. Piety and prestige generation. Short reign years is important because when one of your characters dies and you become your heir, you'll have a short reign, and your vassals will have a lower opinion of you right after the change. And so the higher majesty is, the lower that problem is. Tolerance is good when you have a large empire and you have different cultures and religions underneath you, but it's less important at the beginning. And then legalism unlocks all the different laws. It's important to point out that technology is based on each county. So the highest technology in each realm will usually be the capital. So this county is going to have very low tech points compared to the duke, compared to a king, and only duke level titles or higher will automatically generate points. You can still steal points as a count, and you can still gain points through fighting wars, but you will not be able to auto-generate points. So you're going to be a lot slower until you can secure a duchy title. So our next menu is your military. Retinues are locked behind a DLC, but they're very nice to have. So army levies, you have your direct army that you can call upon from your county, and you can raise them for free and dismiss them whenever you want, as long as they're in friendly territory. You will have no negative effects from dismissing your army. You can raise your levy armies. So every direct vassal that has a positive opinion of you will lend you a certain amount of his army based on your laws and based on his opinion of you. So the more they like you, the more troops they'll give you. And these can also be dismissed whenever you're in friendly territory. And the longer that you have them out, like the more troops you pull from your vassals, after a certain amount of time, they will start to degrade relation with that lord because you're still using his troops, and he doesn't like that. But if you're fighting defensive wars, there is no negative effects of calling upon your vassals. This last one is your hired. So if you were to hire a mercenary band, you can dismiss them whenever you would like. And then this little bit shows you the monthly cost of all the troops you have in the field. So right now I didn't have anyone out, but if I were to raise everybody, it shows the monthly cost. And you can raise vassals for free, but you pay with opinion. And then the same thing goes for fleets, which function the same way as normal troop movement. So troops move from county to county, and it is an immediate transfer. So if I were to raise troops and I move them, it forms this arrow. And once it reaches halfway, you can no longer pull the troops back. And this is a new thing with the newest update for Holy Fury, is there's a rule you can turn on and off where you can get it all the way up to here, and then as soon as you click on your county, the whole movement stops. But with the new rule, once you get halfway, you can't stop the movement. And ships work the same way. They'll have an arrow, basically a loading time arrow, and once it gets halfway, you can't pull them back. Intrigue, this is where you can do different decisions like invite people to your court, hold feasts and other things. You can, if you have too many titles, you can click a thing that'll have your steward give out titles, but I would recommend not doing that because if you have a bad steward who is very selfish, he'll give them to his friends or himself. So that can not be the best thing for your country. Each one of these has different conditions that they have to meet before they can be toggled, and you can also favorite important decisions, and it'll pull them to the top and highlight them. You can show your plots for murdering and revoking titles, all of your known plots that NPCs are currently going on and doing. You have your prisoners, so if you take someone prisoner in battle, you can have them here, you can ransom them, you can kill them, you can do whatever. And this also shows when vassals are starting factions and they're about to rebel, shows up here. Factions, this is when people dislike their ruler, they'll join factions for independence or changing laws or things like that. And once they get over there'll be a percentage, so they'll have like 50% of your troops. Say you have 1,000, they have 500. Once they have as many or more troops than you, they will enforce their claim, being like, hey, grant us independence or we're going to go to war, or change this law or we'll go to war. And if you lose that war, you will lose your main title. So another county will become the Duke of Brittany. You will still have your county for the most part, but somebody else will be in charge, and then you'll have to fight your way back up through the feudal hierarchy to get the duchy or the kingdom or whatever title you had lost. So we did factions. Our next one is religion. It shows the current pope. It'll show anti-popes if another country has put their own pope into power. And then it shows which bishops you have as direct vassals. And it'll show their opinion of the pope and their opinion of you. So you can mess with laws and things like that to make them like you more. It also shows moral authority. The lower the moral authority of a religion, the more likely they are to have heresy and all these other problems. So you want to try and keep that as high as possible. If you turn your map mode to religion and you click on a specific religion-controlled area, it'll show you the holy sites in white. So you want to control as many holy sites as possible. And almost everyone has Jerusalem as a holy site. So Sunni have these holy sites, including Jerusalem. After a while, crusades will actually be called for kingdom-level titles holding these areas. So if you go back to realms, say the Seljuk Turks take all of Anatolia, the Pope can call a crusade for the Kingdom of Anatolia, and whoever has the highest contribution to that war will get the kingdom title when it's over, if you win. And so that can be a good way to grab large amounts of land, assuming you can hold on to them. And then the last one is societies, but that's mostly DLC, and you can't really do anything with it unless you have the DLC required. If you hit escape and then message settings, you can select what kinds of messages go where, whether they pop up, whether they pause the game when they pop up, if they go high priority, low priority, or even down here into your message log. So if you're getting spammed with messages, you can either have them automatically pause the game or whatever is necessary. I like to have a lot of war declarations on auto pause when I win a siege, when I win a battle, when war is declared on me, when I join or accept wars, stuff like that. I like to have it pause. When children are born, I like to have it pause so I can name them, and stuff like that is really important so you don't get overwhelmed by this game. There are multiple speed settings, 1 through 5. Most of the time, you can have it run on 2, 3, and 4, but as you're learning, you might want to run it a little slower or stop it more often to read through everything and try and make good decisions, because this game is in depth and it's very complex, and if you don't slow down and take your time to learn everything, little things can pop up 100 years down the line that you didn't think was a big problem, and then all of a sudden, you know, your great-granddaughter who you married off to France for no reason now has a claim on England, and you're at war with all of France and you didn't know it was coming. So you do have to have this kind of deeper thought. It's not necessary, but it does make the game a lot more fun when you do it. The last thing to go over is these little alerts that come up at the top of your screen. You can dismiss them, you can disable them forever, but most of the time you're going to want to fix the problem. So this first one is my ruler is unmarried, and you're going to want to try and find someone young with good traits and good skills. And so if you mouse over all of the different skills, they'll tell you how they affect the individual person. So the first one is education, and education varies in 2 ways. You have the education type and the education level. So this one is a diplomatic education with 4 stars, which is the highest level. Then you have a diplomatic education with 2. So this one only gets +3 diplomacy and 5 fertility, whereas this one gets +2 intrigue, +2 learning, +9 diplomacy, and +10 fertility for -1 martial. And so when your character turns 16, they will get their education level. So my character is 3rd level stewardship education. More traits to look out for are genetic ones. So if you find someone who is attractive or genius or something like that, it's important to try and marry those good traits into your dynasty. So if you come down here at the bottom, there's a whole bunch of different search options. You can search for specific titles, or with these 2 people, you can search for specific people, and you can narrow your search down. You can narrow your search down to what you want. So if I go search all, my religion group, so this will be any Christian, not necessarily Catholic. I want a woman, and I want a genius. Here is a 16-year-old genius with fairly good traits that if I give her a gift, she will join our court. So, genius is awesome, 16 is awesome, she'll give kids for a long time, so I can send her a gift for 15 coins, she will join, and I can invite her to court. But I might have been able to just marry, who knows. So, I didn't actually have to gift, I could have just married her. But, this is just a quick tutorial, I wasn't actually thinking about trying to marry. But you want to go through, genius is probably the number one. Quick is genius light, it's +3 to all traits instead of +5. Another important one is attractive. So this gives you +30 opinion with people of the opposite sex and +1 diplomacy. And then there is strong, which will give you +2 martial, +1 diplomacy, +10 fertility, +1 health, so you're less likely to die, whole bunch of opinion pluses, and personal combat pluses. So these are things that you really want to build on. And there are also negatives, like there's inbred, which doesn't start at the, like when the game first starts, there's not any inbred people. At least women who are Catholic don't start inbred. But you also have like hunchback, you have lisps, you have dwarves, I think. So you have all these negative things that you want to try and breed out of your dynasty. Because dynasty in this game is the law. Your titles will change, but you really want to try and keep one member of your dynasty in control of at least one county till the end of the game. And that's how you win. You really are just trying to amass as much land for your dynasty as possible. Because if you build a giant empire, say you take all of Spain, all of France, and all of Germany, and where the Holy Roman Empire is, all under one empire, and all of a sudden you lose the empire title, and the rest of your dynasty isn't established, you could be some random great nephew in Barcelona, and that's all you have. You went from ruling this massive empire and all this hard work to now you're back at a count with only 100 years left in the game before it ends. So you need to try and work hard to get your dynasty established. Even if they're not under your empire, maybe you have France and Hungary as your dynasty. You're more likely to get alliances, so you can take on the Holy Roman Empire together. And so you start to get all the little diplomatic fun things of, you know, forging alliances and fighting your wars and trying to marry the right people for the right reasons. And that's really where this game becomes fun, when you get into the diplomacy and the role-playing aspect of it. So I really hope this was helpful. If you need more information, please check out my Ireland series. I basically walk you through the process of starting as the Duchy of Mumu and going all the way through and forming the Kingdom of Ireland. And I set myself up in a decent position where I could take England. I think I was married into England and I had a kid with a title claim. So if needed, I could start a war for the Kingdom of England. So that's probably very helpful if you're worried about if you want to get the game or not. I would say definitely check that out, because it'll tell you everything you need to know and if the game is right for you. So thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys next time.